Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter and I'm here today to talk about Stranger Things 4 episodes 1, 2 and 3. It's a little bit different from coverage that I've done for shows in the past, particularly from Netflix. It's typically been, the attempt has been to do every single episode individually, but too many shows linger on too long, and the truth is that when it comes to binge shows, most people stop caring about opinions on them and it takes too long to get to the later episodes. So because of that, trying something different here. This is going to be a discussion or my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of season 4. So I will say spoiler warning for the first 3 episodes. Haven't seen past that yet. But I also get to watch it quicker, which is kind of fun. I do prefer weekly releases, but this is how they're releasing it. So you get a couple of videos on the first chunk that they've came out with. Episodes 1 through 7 I'll split in 2 over 2 videos, and then I'll do a video on the final 2 episodes when they hit in July. That's the plan. So there's so much to talk about. Obviously, this is the downside to doing 3 episodes in one video, is that I'm probably not going to go into as much detail because there's so much to talk about over 3 episodes and so many ideas. And I think with this first one in particular, I'm probably going to talk about just what the season is, what the concept is, and how I feel about that. I should mention that I actually did rewatch seasons 1, 2, and 3 for this. I finished watching season 3 again yesterday. like literally like an hour before season 4 went up on Netflix. And just to reiterate my thoughts, just as if this is the first time you're seeing me, you don't know my thoughts on Stranger Things. Stranger Things is a show that felt like it was made just for me. In many ways, I was kind of like shocked by just this existing when it came out in 2016. And season 1 is obviously great. It's what made everyone fall in love with the show in the first place. Season 2 is uneven. Season 2 is a bit slow to start, but I actually do think that some of the later episodes in season 2 are better than anything in season 1. I would say season 1's better overall because it's more consistent, but season 2 I think has higher highs. Season 3 I think fixed all the problems that season 2 had and was perfectly paced. It was a fun season where all the characters got to interact with each other. All the plot lines were pretty solid. I love the monster, I love them all. I love season 3, and rewatching it again, it's only just kind of like strengthened what I felt about this show up until now, which is that season 3 is the best season. I think it's basically firing all cylinders and does so much that I love. Season 2, again, I feel pretty much the same as the way I did the first time, and I think the finale is better than season 1's, and a couple of the episodes before that are also great. I'm not talking about necessarily the controversial episode. I don't hate it as much as some people do, but I do think it is a bit of a weird pacing problem. But love a lot of that. So love the show. I think even at its weakest, it's still very good. I still love so much of season 2. It's just a bit slow to start. So really excited to get into this. It's been a long time since season 3 came out. It's the biggest gap that the show's had, and you feel that especially in just how much older a lot of the actors feel get into this season. Now obviously this might have happened anyway, just because they're going through those ages where all of a sudden like they're going to like shoot up a little bit between seasons, but a lot of them really feel older. I was especially, funnily enough, I was noticing it more on the boys than I was the girls. I feel like Max still just looks like Max. She's a bit taller, but I don't really feel like she looks that different. A couple of the guys feel super different to me. Lucas, I feel, maybe it's just his hair because he's letting his hair grow out a bit, but he looks so different to me. Obviously the ones who are already older just look the same pretty much, but I'm talking about the younger ones who are now actually in high school. So you got that going. But I did see the trailer that came out, the first, not the final trailer, but I watched the first proper trailer for season 4. I stayed away from the most recent one. I wanted to go in fairly cold. I wanted to just experience it as it was. I wanted to see what it was doing and enjoy the show. And I am feeling pretty good 3 episodes in. I know there was a lot of worry about the episode runtimes spiraling out of control, and a lot of them are over an hour. And I was paying attention to that when I was watching season 3 especially. I was like, oh, how long was last season in terms of like, each episode? And most of them were 50-something minutes. The finale was a bit longer, an hour and like 15, whereas this season, like most of the episodes are that long, and then there's a couple towards the end that are going to be even longer. The finale that's coming in July, episode 9, is about 2.5 hours long, which is kind of nuts. But what I would say is that it's not actually that weird if you stop and think about TV traditionally, it's not that weird to have your last episode be a double length finale, right? So if the show is usually an hour, having a one that's 2 hours at the ending isn't actually that strange. I don't really have a problem with that. 2.5 hours does feel quite long, but I'm enjoying the show so far. I'm enjoying the season. So unless it's really like jumps the shark or something at some point, I doubt I'm going to have a problem with that last episode. I'm probably going to be so engrossed in the story. I already know that when I'm done recording this, as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to go and watch episode 4, and I have heard very good buzz about episode 4. The episode 4 is getting some hype. There's a lot of like, once you hit episode 4, it gets really good, and I already think it's really good. So I'm kind of excited. So I'll try and just sort of like group it by character groups because it's just the easy way to talk about it. But I think we'll talk about Hawkins. We'll talk about the Hawkins mystery. The main threat is kind of what, because that's where that is, and it's going to be impossible not to compare it to something, and that's okay because, you know, Stranger Things by its nature is about encapsulating and taking a lot of ideas from things that were popular in the 80s and kind of putting them in this fresh thing. You know, a lot of season 1, you know, I know it feels, it's obviously there's differences, but there's a lot of ET in season 1 with the relationship with 11. You know, you know, obviously she's different than ET because he's a little alien, but a lot of the relationship between you know, Mike and her is very Elliot and ET in a lot of ways. It's a different kind of relationship, but there was a lot of that, you know, the riding the bikes, the wig, like there's so much of it. This season is very Nightmare on Elm Street, and because we have a lot of characters, I would even go as far to say it's Dream Warriors, which is the third Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Maybe I'm biased there because I think Dream Warriors is the best one, and I love the original. That is not a knock on the original Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street. I love that movie, but I love Dream Warriors more. And it's not until basically the end of the first episode where I really got that feeling, but I was like, oh, that's what this is. This is a killer who's, it's not quite dreams, it's more like he can just kind of strike and make them go into a trance at any time. But, you know, they see him in what feels like a dream, and that there's like some events, usually seemingly related to their past and some sort of trauma in their life. That became really obvious in episode 2. But he kills them in this trance, in this dream scenario, and then in the real world they die, and they die quite horrifically with like all their bones snapping and going sort of all the wrong ways, and then eventually their eyes being poked out or poked in. But I don't know if it really matters in the grand scheme of things. But I guess the first thing I would say before we even talk about the plot of what this is, I would say that this is definitely more adult and horror than anything. There's always been horror in the show. It's always had horror elements. It's always been horror science fiction. But I think this season, and maybe this is because the characters are getting older, so they feel more confident in doing darker things. And the opening of episode 1 is very dark. We'll talk about that when I'm talking about 11. But it's always had horror and sci-fi in it. But I feel like this season, because the characters are getting older, and to an extent that also means that the audience, like, obviously I was already an adult when this started, but a lot of people who maybe did start watching this either around the age or just a little bit older than the main characters were in season 1. You know, I can imagine a lot of preteens and teens watching Stranger Things when it came out because it was the hot new thing. You know, they're all like, you know, in their early 20s now, or about to hit it, depending on, you know, where they started. So, you know, that's how long it's been since season 1. You know, it's been 6 years and we're on season 4. It takes its time, but the beauty of that is that you know, some more planning in theory goes into it. Obviously this gap was longer because of the pandemic, there's, you know, all these circumstances, but the beauty of that is that each season feels like more of a crafted whole story, and I think each season of Stranger Things to some extent has had that, especially 1 and 3, and I think this season also feels like that, and there's like a clear theme, there's this clear villain, and it is very Freddy Krueger-esque. Not that he's doing wisecracks, but he looks very upside down-esque, but he is this monstrous being who is like the Freddy Krueger who comes and kills you in these dreams. And what I would say about that is it's fun. It's playing on a major movie that was in the 80s, obviously, which fits into the show's whole thing. But the big thing is that it's again just enough different. That's what's so good about the way this show has progressed, is that season 1 you got one monster that's coming out and killing people. Season 2 you have lots of little monsters, so it's kind of the aliens. You even have Paul Reiser, you have like some direct moments that feel kind of aliens-esque towards the end of the season. Season 3, giant monster. right? You've also got a sort of body stature thing going on throughout the season, but then you've got the giant monster for the big ending, right? And in this season, we're doing Freddy Krueger slasher movie style supernatural kills. I'm so in. Like, as a horror fan, like, it's almost like the show started in the Goonies and E.T. and stuff like that I grew up on. Explorers doesn't get enough love. Joe Dante rules. And then it's sort of progressing up through different things that I love. And it is yet to kind of like misfire in terms of the inspirations that it's pulling on. Honestly, as far as like critiques would go, it is juggling a lot, and maybe it does feel like there's a lot, we're bouncing around a lot from different things, but I think that's just kind of part and parcel because we want to use all these characters. The only real negative I have is that Jonathan has always been kind of the weakest of the original characters, and I will say that his new friend this season, this stoner character, the quicker he dies, the better. I really hope he does, because I hate him. He's annoyed me every second he's been on screen. Luckily it's not been too much because we are bouncing around groups, and he's like the least important character of that group because that's where 11 is, and it's where Mike eventually is in episode 2, and it's where obviously Will is. So less of him, or just kill him so he's gone for good. Any of those things are fine. But so back to Hawkins though, because that's where obviously a lot of our characters are, and we get introduced to all these characters who are now in high school, and things have changed a little bit. There's some new characters obviously, which makes sense. It felt like there was maybe a little too many new characters in episode 1, but by the end of the episode, or early in episode 2, I realized it's because we need to have people to kill. There needs to be victims for a slasher villain to work, and while they might be ballsy and kill off a main character later in the season, and obviously at the end of episode 3 it finally does the thing that you knew was coming. Like in episode 1, as this thing's happening to this like character, this cheerleader type character that we meet, Chrissy I think her name was, it's clear that one of the big oh shit moments somewhere in this season is going to be now one of our characters, one of our main characters is going to be the target. So the stakes are going to lift, and it's going to be like we have to stop it from killing one of our characters. And by the end of episode 3, we realize it's Max, and it's, you know, it does a good job of like making sense why it's Max, because it goes after people with trauma. Max has trauma about Billy. She's not in a good place. The stepfather, Billy's father's left them, and they're living in a trailer park now. So she's gone through a lot of stuff. So we'll learn that about her. She's been kind of aggressive to others. She seemingly has broken up with Lucas. Lucas is drifting from the rest of the group because he's getting into basketball, and he hasn't been doing very well, but in episode 1 he does actually end up throwing the winning shot at the end of the game, so they're kind of accepting him as one of him, and he's kind of separating from his core group, and he's with this new group who think his old group of friends are a bunch of nerds and weirdos and freaks, whereas Dustin and Mike are in this new D&D group with Eddie, Munson. Munson's a really like horror name as well. Munson, it's close to Manson. It's also makes me think of Munster. I don't know if Munson itself comes from anything, but it made me think of those two names. But he's very charismatic. He's kind of the leader. He's a senior who's been there for too long, and he's like running this D&D group called the Hellfire Club, which is episode 1's name, funnily enough. And it also leads to what they named the villain. They call it Vecna, this dark wizard it's Vecna's curse that's doing all this. But we're also bringing in this backstory of this presumed serial killer from the 50s, and there's even a reference to Halloween because someone describes maybe he broke out of the mental hospital like that guy with the white mask, and my girl Nancy knew the name. She said Michael Myers. Good on her. Do you know, I feel like Nancy gets thrown under the bus a lot because she's tied to Jonathan's plots a lot of the time. But I think Nancy is much better than Jonathan, and especially in season 3, I was really getting that vibe. She's way more practical than Jonathan. And I'm not against some of the things that, like, I actually can't believe they've got me rooting for Nancy to be back with Steve, because in season 1 I'd said you're nuts for making me think that, but that's where we are. So we've got all these things going on. Speaking of Steve, he's working at the video store with Robin, and I was hoping we were going to get stuff in the video store with them. I don't know how much we're going to go back to there now, but I did enjoy everything we got with them there. Using the computer, talking about the movies, Robin's love life, which, funny enough, one of the benefits of rewatching the past few seasons before this is that I actually got some of the the references really quickly because I remember, they were fresh in my mind. So when they mentioned the girl who used to go here, who went to Nashville, like I instantly knew the conversation from season 3 that was talking about her. I would never have remembered that if I had not rewatched it. So that was like a really nice thing to be able to like feel. Oh, I feel vindicated. I chose to do this. It was fun doing it anyway, so I didn't really need it. But it was just a nice moment when them kind of saying she sounded like a Muppet and like funny stuff. So that's most of her Hawkins characters, I think. If I'm misremembering any, but exactly at the main group, that's who we've got. But Mike's not there for long though, because Mike obviously they say he's going to California for spring break to visit Elle, and he arrives in episode 2 there, but he is there in episode 1. Which, and honestly, one of the most fun kind of like F yeah moments of episode 1 is definitely the reveal, because they're looking for a replacement for Lucas for the D&D game, and the reveal that Dustin thought of Erica is amazing. Erica walking around slow motion, and it turns out she's actually gotten very good at this game. And there was that tease in the last season where she got the starter guide from Will's old stuff. That was a really, really cool reveal. I did like them intercutting that with the basketball game, and it was both Erica and Lucas who kind of had the winning shots at the end, and they sort of like cut between the basketball flying through the air and the D20. I really like the comparisons between those. That was all really fun stuff, I thought. And I felt sad for Max throughout the first episode, and I really loved that she got to be the first kind of one with the hook in the main mystery. Like, she's the one who saw the body in the crime scene because she lives across from where it happens at the end of episode 1. So I love that she gets to be the key character who gets everyone else involved around her. She goes to Dustin, which leads to Steve and Robin. And right away they had the most engaging plot from like a plot perspective, and I was really into that. And I love that it's splitting off into other characters and different groupings, like Robin going with Nancy, and Steve wanted to go with Nancy to like keep her, because by this point, in fact, that's actually one of my favorite little moments of the whole show so far, of the whole season so far, is so the second victim in episode 2 is the dweeby editor guy who's with Nancy, who's working at the college paper or the little paper, whatever it is, because she's not actually at university yet, I don't think, but she like loses him at the trailer park when they're trying to talk to people about the murder, and he dies gruesomely, and they find his body in the middle of the road, and the police are talking to Nancy at his body. And there's a great moment where she's being questioned, where the car pulls up because they've seen all the cops go by, and out comes Steve, Dustin, Robin, and Max. And there's just this great moment where she looks over, and I like this moment for a few reasons. One, because she feels alone and she feels scared that this has happened, and this is like friendly faces, so there's kind of a slight relief to it. But there's also this realization that these murders that she was just investigating that are sounding quite gruesome, like all of a sudden she sees them and thinks, oh, there's stranger things abound. There's something to do with the Hawkins supernatural shit that they've been dealing with, and all of a sudden, like, you have like, one of the best things about this show is when characters start to come together. Like, you see when they've been separated and they start coming together, it's so satisfying because you love them interacting, you love them thinking things through. And obviously what's happening here is different from the previous seasons, but enough weird shit's happened that they have to look into it. And this progresses, it's before they meet Nancy, but they find Eddie and he's scared, he's freaked out, but they're going to believe his story because they've seen enough crazy shit that they're wanting to look into it. But obviously they don't have a living anymore, and they have to try and figure this out, and they don't really know what's going on. They meet up with Nancy and they want to investigate things. In episode 3, their goal is to find out like what links the victims, and they want to talk to the school therapist because that's who Max is seeing, and they steal her keys to go in. And by the end of the episode, realize like Max is recognizing she has all the symptoms that they all had before this thing came after them. We also know that the next victim presumably is one of the douchebag basketball players who want to hunt down Eddie. All that stuff. It's fun to find out, and it's fun to sort of unravel that mystery. What I will say about this villain, and they're calling it Vecna, But there's also this possibility that it's this, Victor Creel, I want to say. It's very close to Victor Crowley, who is the villain in the Hatchet movies, which are not very good. Like, the Hatchet movies are meant to be this throwback to 80s slashers, but I actually don't think they're just kind of mediocre. Like, I wasn't really super into that. There's like 4 of them as well. Me and Tim did them on Streams After Midnight a couple of years ago, and I'd seen a couple of them already, but I wasn't super in love with them, even though they're supposed to be a love letter to things I care about. Whereas, in this, like, a lot of the feeling of them coming together and figuring out these mysteries is very Dream Warriors, and it always kind of has been. So, this season kind of like really encapsulating that and becoming that is super fun. And I love the look of the villain as well. And I also loved, because at first I was thinking maybe is this Victor guy, because episode 3, when Robin and Nancy are at the newspaper looking through the archives, or look at the library, sorry, looking through the newspaper archives, and they find some information that suggests that maybe Victor was actually a victim of whatever this, villain, this Vecna is, and it killed his family, and he was just kind of left to blame for it. So that's, he was never really a killer, and probably they're going to go and try and speak to him. I loved this actually, when they go into the library and Robin's kind of poking holes in the theory, right? Because Robin's with her. We'll maybe talk about the potential Steve dynamics and everything Dustin's bringing up, but she's poking holes in all this, and she says, wait a minute, so you're saying that this could be this guy, and these murders happen when? And she's like, 1959. She's like, so the killer would be in his 70s then. And I started laughing because I felt like they were talking about why the new Halloween movies and like even the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, why they're kind of stupid that these killers are in their 70s. Like, just by, if you do the math, they're in their at least late 60s, and they're still going around, being not supernatural, unstoppable killers. I laughed a little bit. I don't know if it's an intentional thing, but it gave me a good chuckle, being very critical of some of those movies. But yeah, so Steve wanted to go with her because he's like, hey, there's this thing going around killing people, maybe we shouldn't like be on our own. So he tried to go with her, but Robin couldn't drive, so Robin goes with Nancy. And there's a bit of a weirdness there, where she clearly doesn't really seem to like Robin very much, and I'm sure Robin's going to win her over, because why wouldn't she? Robin is like delightful. There's a moment, I think it's in episode 1, maybe 2, but no, it's 2, because it's when the kids are there, and they're looking up stuff and they're ringing people to try and find out where Eddie is. Steve's the one attending to customers in the store, and he's trying to chat up some girls, and they have boyfriends or whatever, so he's kind of defeated, and he says he's the only one attending to customers, and that someone has to do it. And Robin looks at him and says, especially if they're babes, and winks at him. I can't really wink very well, so I'm not going to do the wink, but she winks at him, and the way she did it really made me laugh. I thought it was hilarious. Should also mention that Dustin doesn't know she's gay, which so he's actually still pushing for Steve to ask her out, which is really funny. I suspect that he'll probably find out later this season, and it'll come up. And there's a moment where, and the reason why I'm backtracking to that is because there's a moment where Robin is starting to suspect that maybe Nancy feels weird with Robin, because maybe there's kind of a weird thing, because she thinks Robin and Steve are a thing, and she's trying to make it clear they're platonic. Obviously, she doesn't feel comfortable, coming out necessarily to her yet. They're maybe not that close. And early, in episode 1, she even says she's scared to ask out the girl she likes, because if she asks out the wrong girl, and the girl's not gay, she might, spread the story, and she's worried about being like, I think town pariah was the phrase she used, but she has this worry that she will be looked at differently by everyone, and there's this fear that's understandable, makes sense. And so Robin getting to interact with a different character is cool, because as much as I love her with Steve and love her with Dustin, getting her to see with Nancy and hopefully another character or two as the season progresses is going to be really good stuff, because she was an excellent addition last season. Season 2 added Max, season 3 added Robin, and they have been like both just great. So it's okay. If we want to kill Jonathan off, definitely his friend's more important to kill off. But if we want to kill off Jonathan, or have him just leave and never come back, that'd be okay. But so digging all that. And I'm digging the idea, because like I was getting to this like a couple of minutes ago before I spiraled into the character talk again, is when I got to the end of the second episode, I think it was, and I realized that this being so he's coming in, not in dreams, but it's kind of like dreams, right? It's kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street, where he's entering in. They're in a trance, and they're basically seeing, a place in their head like a dream, where they're walking around, and they're seeing this clock. There's this motif that keeps recurring of the grandfather clock that's sometimes standing there, sometimes it's lying on the ground, sometimes it's sort of in the wall, like kind of coming through the wall. I love the revelation, I think it's the end of episode 2, that this creature is in the Upside Down, and it's basically reaching through to the real world. So while it is kind of coming in a dreamlike state, that's how it's kind of like contacting its victims. It is physically in the same place, or maybe not in the same place. It seems to be in this one creepy house, but it probably the house that the Victor dude lived in when he was younger. It does seem to be reaching through from the Upside Down, and we every so often, and we see more of it in episode 3 where it's there and there's all the other beasties around. I do love this. I love, I love Freddy Krueger. I love some of those movies a lot. But one of the things you could say is that you just kind of roll with the concept that Freddy Krueger is now a spirit or a demon that can do this. You just have to accept it and you just move on. And I'm not saying that every part of this is just completely logical, but there is something kind of a bit more concrete, because we're so established of the idea of the Upside Down, that the idea that there's something else in there that's just sort of independent, possibly, and maybe it isn't. Maybe we'll find out later it connects back to the big monster. It's the same thing, or whatever. Because I think early on what I was going to say is that before they started talking about the fact that this Victor guy might be innocent and he's just a victim of this monster, I was actually thinking that, maybe it is this guy. Maybe this killer, kind of like Freddy, became something supernatural. Maybe he ended up in the Upside Down and he's now killing from there, and that's why it's like this now. And that was when I thought the original murders were just murders, right? Kind of like Freddy, where it was like a normal murders in the backstory, and then now it's the supernatural kind. This episode 3 made me veer a little from that and made me think, maybe he is just innocent. But I mean, obviously there's so much, like, they could completely flip me on that again. There's so much to go into. But I do love the idea of something reaching out from the Upside Down and that kind of, mimicking a Freddy Krueger style murder. I think that is actually a really fun mechanical idea. And doesn't feel like completely out of nowhere either. It feels like this fits in the world that the show has created, whilst also being very different to anything plot-wise that the show has done up until this point. To an extent, obviously there's been possessions, people get taken over, the spy stuff in season 2, or even the body snatcher stuff in season 3. So there's not complete absurdity in terms of, like, a jump, but I love all that stuff. So the main plot in Hawkins, I love the shit out of. That is like the main meat of the Stranger Things sandwich that I want, and it is delivering. It is so much my vibe, and I'm digging all of it. So yeah, and obviously the other side of this is Lucas kind of like trying to like help whilst being with the others. You think maybe he's going to do a bad thing and like help these guys beat up Eddie when they find him, because the boyfriend, the main jock who's on the basketball team, wants to find Eddie, and he says they just want to talk, but obviously they're going to beat the shit out of him and maybe even kill him if they're not careful. And then they want to find Dustin, because Dustin might have been looking for him, right? And he tries to warn Dustin, but he gets caught on the radio. He goes with them and he gives them the location of where he's hiding, although notably he doesn't say that he was in like the little like beach house at the side. They're just searching the main house, and at the end it looks like Lucas is running to try and warn Eddie or something, right? That's what it appeared to me at the end. But I'm, I think it's good that Lucas is probably going to intersect with them again. I did feel that Lucas was maybe getting the shaft a little bit, and it made sense plot wise. It makes sense that he is drifting from them in this way, and this season will make them stronger bond wise again, I'm sure. But it makes sense plot wise, but it does mean he's getting the shaft a little bit, and that he is separated and he's interacting with characters who are inherently not that likable, and not in an annoying way. Like they're just like they're serving their roles, and of course some of them are going to die by this monster, and we're going to see like how that stuff plays out. But so that's the Hawkins stuff, and I know like obviously this is not as much detail in each plot as I would if I was doing each episode individually, but different format, roll with me. Let's talk about 11. And There was actually a warning placed because of the tragedy in Texas. And it's not a school shooting that happens in the episode, but you can see, like, once you get to a certain point in that opening of episode 1, you realize why they decided to warn people, because it does feature a lot of children dying, and it's a very dark sequence. We get kind of, it's almost a very it's a kind of a Lost style opening, or even a little Better Call Saul in a weird way, where we see someone going through the routine, but it's like hiding their face and like doing the karate, and it's like all the routine and all the details, and it eventually reveals that it's Brenner, and then it reveals that this is 1979, and this is, so the first season was 1983, so it's 4 years prior, so we know 11 exists. She's obviously younger than she was in season 1, but we see him talking to number 10 and try to get him to use his powers, and he's doing tests, and then he starts getting freaked out and scared, and he gets knocked out, the door comes flying at him, and he walks through what's effectively been a massacre where all of the people who work there are pretty much dead, all of the other kids are dead, and it's 11, little 11 turns around, and I thought, for what this is, which is obviously them digitally making the younger version of 11 by using her, presumably they used either maybe her face from season 1 and sort of put it on, a younger like body double or something, whatever they did with it. And I thought it worked well in the moment, and it helped that obviously there wasn't a lot of movement. She was just kind of standing, staring, and looking mean, so it was fine. This is a very interesting dark development to put in for her, that really shakes up, because we've always thought of her as this innocent, like, kid who has been, this victim of this horrible lab, and we've always been very sympathetic, I think, as an audience with her. And I'm not saying that goes out the window now, not by a long shot. In fact, I'm still super sympathetic to 11, and I was feeling like the secondhand, like, sort of embarrassment and cringe, and like, I wanted her to beat the shit out of the bully Angela in the classroom during the presentation, right? And she, it's like we forget that 11 hasn't grown up in a system where she's with other kids. So this, like, nightmare of being in, like, a school with assholes, and she does feel like a little kid again when she's trying to talk about Hopper being her hero. And like, I was like, yeah, punch her, 11. And I got my wish, funnily enough, in episode 2 with a roller skate, which was delightful. And maybe that makes me a bit of a, I get, obviously it's linking back to, like, and because one of the questions I have, actually, so she gets a little quick flashes of this incident from the start of episode 1, this massacre. I was thinking, did she always remember this? Did she always know that she had done this? And I'm not sure if she did. I'm not sure if she's just getting memories and flashes now, if this was something that was kind of like conditioned out of her because it was so traumatic. Or did she always know this? Like, I almost want to rewatch the whole show again with this idea that she knows the whole time that she's done this out of a fit of rage. And so, when we get to episode 3, and episode 3 is called The Monster and the Superhero, like, just from the title I got, this is both about 11. I mean, you could argue it's also about the villain, I suppose, Vecna, but, or Vecna, but I took it as both being about her, and the idea that she thinks she could be just a monster, and during, I think it's episode 2 where I think Dustin refers to her, or maybe it's Steve calls, we used to have this girl with superpowers, and but episode 3, Mike calls her a superhero, and I actually really like this scene. She's kind of mad at him because the way he reacted after she got, and it was really tortured watching the scene where it's on the ice. Not the ice. Sorry, it's because I'm thinking skating on the skating rink, and the bullies are filming. They're doing awful stuff. They trip her. They throw the milkshake on her. Like, all of that. Like, I really, like, part of me wanted Mike to just, like, not like get violent, but the idea that now that Mike's here, he's going to step in and, like, stick up for her, and he does try to, of course, but it just, like, ultimately there's only so much he can help in the moment. But when he's talking to her in the bedroom and she's, like, fixing her little diorama, like, obviously she's getting upset, and I'm like, Mike, say the right thing. And her pointing out that he can't actually say I love you is really interesting, because obviously we heard him say it last season, but he never said it to her. She said it to him at the end of the season, but he never quite said it to her directly, and he's really struggling with that. And his little speech here, while he never says I love you, he does say a lot of really important things. He says, it's a very sweet speech where he's talking about how you're the most important person in the world, you mean so much to me, and he ends with you're a superhero, and she says, not anymore. She thinks she's nothing without her powers, and obviously there's this temptation at the end of the episode where maybe she's going to get them back. Like, Paul Reiser's coming in and he's going to get her powers back, maybe even stronger than before. With a purpose, because this evil's coming and she's the only one who can fight it, kind of thing. But I really liked him saying that, like him calling her, like I almost wish he ended the scene by saying, "You're still my superhero" or something. I know it's a little cheesy, but I think in the context of the scene it would have worked. Like, you'll always be my superhero, or you'll always be a superhero to me. Because let's face it, superheroes do deal with tragedy and they do overcome them. That's kind of like their thing. And I think that speech sort of hit home a little bit there, and I think if nothing else, like, I want this to be like, most of the main characters in the show, I find myself always wanting them to get a happy ending. I like them, I care about them, and I think 11, like, I didn't feel bad when the Billy got her nose broken with the roller skate, because she was being awful. She was being a monster. And while I'm not saying people should answer things with violence, like, I understand. Like, in the moment, I wanted her to do it, and I wanted 11 to get one up on her. And you felt bad when she tried to use her power at the school and nothing happened, and she was looking an idiot with her hand out. So I hope that, like, while I do want her to get her powers back, I want her to be the superhero. I want her to save the day and save everyone in Hawkins. I will also say that I want her to learn that she doesn't need her superpowers to be worthy, to be good, to be someone that she can be proud of, to be, like, I'm getting cheesy here saying this, but I want her to learn that those powers themselves are not what defines her. And I hope that's part of the story of this. And I think it, probably will be. This show, if one thing that occurred to me as I was rewatching the previous 3 seasons, is that each season does, like, a season 3 especially, like, it pays off everything it's set up, and it's so neat and so well constructed because of that. So I have faith that they're probably going to, like, hit that point. But of course, it's not the final season, so they might leave some of it for season 5. That's the one thing, is they might leave some for season 5, and that's going to be torture at the end of the season. And because it is the penultimate season, as far as everyone knows, I think they've already said season 5 is definitely the final season, they might give us a dark cliffhanger. It's possible this is the one time they might do it at the end of a season, because they know it's going to hit the final season, and they want us to have that wait be excruciating. I know they do, because they're monsters. The people that make the show are monsters. So, yeah, Paul Reiser, his name, it's just that weird thing. Same with Better Call Saul. Like, Ed Begley Jr. is just always Ed Begley Jr. Like, I never switched to anything. Owens, Dr. Owens, that doesn't even sound familiar. I just rewatched, like, all the whole thing, and Owens doesn't even sound familiar. Dr. Owens, of course, the military, like, they actually think the first murder victim is 11. They think that she's assassinating people from a distance, because that's kind of what they were trying to make her do originally. And Owens wants to stick up for her, and Owens, like, brings in his people at the end to come and get her, and gives her a choice, and makes it, like, you've been told by people like me for too long what to do and what you are. And he says he believes in her, and says he believes that she's good, and you should find out for yourself, but it's your choice. If you want to go home, you can go home. I did like at the end, though, it did seem like she has made this choice, she is in the car with him, but it did seem like he'd sent, like, some of his people to go and tell Mike and the others where she was. Like, I actually really appreciated that. I really did. So I think they're going to know. I'll be interested to see how they then factor into the plot from here, because obviously Joyce is off doing something on her own plot that's super relevant, and Eleven's off doing her own thing now. It does make me wonder, given that all of the actual mystery that's happening is taking place in Hawkins itself, but all the other characters, I do wonder what Mike, Will, and Jonathan are going to be doing, and Jonathan's stupid friend, who I could do with entirely less of. So that's very interesting to see what they're going to do with them. I wonder if they just end up back in Hawkins because they take them to Hawkins. I don't know why they would do that, I suppose, if they think it's dangerous, but maybe that's where they'll want to go if they think Eleven is going to eventually go there. But really, really intrigued. Or maybe they're going to like just pick them up and take them to where Elle is. Maybe she said, "Hey, I'm going to come with you, but I want them to come to." Maybe she. I don't know. That would leave out Jonathan's friend would just be left behind at that point because he wasn't there. So that's actually such a great idea. But I mean, if we're not doing that, then we'll see. But I'm curious. Like I say, I've heard a lot of buzz about episode 4, so I'm excited to go watch that. Obviously, Joyce. What was funny to me actually is Joyce. I will say that on a like a meta level, I was starting to think that Joyce is a horrible parent because Elle's having a horrible time at school. Will's like sort of looking out for as best he can, but you know he's not exactly Mr. Step in and like be tough or anything, is he? Will's never been that. So I was like, are you really not noticing? You're not really saying. I mean, not that Joyce should go and like deal with the bully, but just the idea that noticing that Elle's going through a really tough time, and it feels like there's no indication in any of these first 3 episodes that she's even remotely aware that Elle's having a hard time at all. So that was a bit weird. That was slightly weird. But I get it. They've got a plot. By the way, I love Bauman. Murray Bauman. I love that he's got a bigger role here. I love that that's who Joyce phones for help when she gets the note. Or I guess the Russian doll, and well, it's not actually a Russian. I mean, it's a doll that comes from Russia, but it's not a Russian doll. If that makes sense, because that's an actual thing. But him coming in, I thought he had some great lines about why he was there, lying to the kids. I thought he was popping me like I hate Jonathan's friend. I kind of loved like him giving him shit and constantly saying, "I don't know who this guy is." Like, I still don't know who you are. that I was like, "Yeah, Bauman, you're on my side, Bauman. You're the best." So I'm all about that. And him sensing there was tension, which I mean is quite obvious anyway. But that's kind of been the running joke with him, is that he keeps sensing the tension in the couples. Like season 2, it was Jonathan and Nancy. Season 3, it was Hopper and Joyce. So. They're off to Alaska to pay money. Honestly, the biggest thing with this on it is that I thought that I'm surprised that Joyce has 40 grand that she can take out of the bank. And it's not an unfathomable amount of money for someone who's doing okay to have in the bank or have the credit limit to take out. But it didn't. I mean, I don't get the vibe from the last 3 seasons that Joyce is exactly, rolling in dough. So I was a little surprised. She's like, "Yeah, let's go to the bank and get the money." I thought she was going to ask Murray to like chip in, but nope. She, I don't know. Maybe someone can explain. Like maybe like she got like a lot of payoff money or something for like the government faking Will's death. Maybe that was the thing. Maybe I've forgotten something there, but so they're on a plane to Alaska, and every time we kind of see them from episode 2 onwards, we kind of also cut to Hopper and him being in this prison when they first find him. This is a minor thing, but like obviously they shave his head and his facial hair, pretty, down, when he gets captured. So the first few times you see him, and it's meant to be right, during and after the end of season 3 where he potentially died, the mustache did look a bit it was quite clearly a fake mustache, and it stuck out a little bit, is all I'm saying. It wasn't the worst. It's not that long until he gets it taken away, so it's fine, but I will say it stuck out a little bit to me that the mustache looked really fake. But yeah, his plan is to get his leg hit so that he can get his foot out of the shackles and make his daring escape. He's meant to be on the plane when Joyce has paid off the guy. He smuggles stuff in and out of Russia. He's going to come back with Hopper. That's the plan. We'll see if that actually goes through as smoothly as that. part of me thinks, because obviously I want a lot of the characters to interact together, and it does feel like they're more spread out than they've ever been before. So hopefully there is kind of a situation where they all end up in one place. Well, everyone but Jonathan's friend, but everyone else, and maybe even Jonathan, he can stay behind if he wants, I suppose. But I'm excited about that. I'm also this idea of rekindling potentially Steve and Nancy. It does feel a little bit influenced in the sense that, like, obviously after season 2, everyone loved Steve, and everyone was kind of like, Jonathan's whatever. Like, he served his purpose in season 1, but it wasn't like we were all rooting for him that much. And then, you know, season 3 just became this, like, Steve is one of the best characters, and his relationship with Dustin and Robin is fantastic, and we want more of this. And Steve all of a sudden feels like a much better prospect for Nancy and vice versa. And I think I don't need it to happen. Like, I'm not necessarily rooting for it per se, but it's certainly, I'm definitely going to enjoy it more, I think, than the constant, oh, will Nancy and Jonathan go to college together, blah blah blah. Because, like I say, Jonathan's side of it is definitely the worst of the two, and this idea that they're kind of prodding at it now, with Robin thinking that maybe Nancy wants Steve again, and Dustin even noticing that Steve felt like he was kind of throwing himself at Nancy a little bit and being like, "Oh, well, I'll come and be your protector." Was nice, and I'm kind of cool with them pursuing that a little bit. In some weird roundabout way, it would be kind of fitting, but I'm cool with that. So yeah, and like I say, a lot of these interactions between Nancy and Robin are funny, and a lot of the interactions with Dustin and Steve have always been gold. I mean, Steve even threatens to punch his teeth out, and Dustin's like, hey, that's not cool. And obviously his teeth are a sensitive subject because they were missing at the front of his mouth for so long. So that was a fun beat as well. All these little things. I think on a larger scale, one of the things I like about this is they kind of set up, it's on the news at one point that someone's saying they think the town is cursed because ever since Barbara, funnily enough, in season 1, it has been kind of one, like, at this point they're starting to notice, and season 3 had a lot more town deaths than previous seasons. Like, they said it was a fire, I think, on the news, so that's what the cover-up story was, but all the people that got body snatched died. And that was quite a lot of people that made up this monster that we got at the end of the season. So the body count rose dramatically in season 3, and there was these incidents in the prior seasons. So at this point, yeah, if you're in Hawkins, you have to start feeling like this place is it wouldn't surprise me if at the end of the show, at the end of season 5, everyone just leaves Hawkins. Like, if it's just left a ghost town because it's not worth being here anymore. Like, too many deaths, too many weird things. We have to move on and just go about our lives. It would not surprise me in the slightest if that's where we end this show. But I am very happy right now, by and large. I'm really, like, I'm not ready to say it's going to take a lot for me to say this dethrones season 3. It really will. So that might be an impossible feat, but I will say that a lot of what it's doing, especially with the main Hawkins monster and mystery and those kids working together, and some of the character stuff it's doing with some of them, I like what it's doing with Max. I think Dustin and Mike are really cool. Will's always been kind of an odd one to me because Will was like a plot device in season 1, and he felt kind of like a tacked on character to an extent in the last couple seasons. And one of the things that I think it was rough about him in season 2 is that it was kind of always Joyce is worried about Will. It was one of the nice things about going and rewatching them and getting to season 3 is that's kind of where that loosens up, and he's not just this constant source of trauma from the upside down, because that was kind of grating a little bit in season 2. So I'm pleased about that. I'm pleased that it wasn't any girls last season, and some people said, oh, maybe that's a little early sign that maybe he'll be gay, and or whatever. And certainly he gets uncomfortable in the first episode here where a girl tries to touch him with her foot. So maybe they are going down that path, and that would be cool, and it would definitely give him something, because he does feel, because he was the one that wasn't really there in season 1, because he was the one who was missing, he's inherently had less than the others and never felt like he gelled with them again. And part of that is because he immediately was supposed to act like he was like, PTSD from the events season 1. So he's had kind of this anchor around him, as far as just being as likable or as fun as the other characters, or being as engaging as the other characters. But I'm, seeing a lot of these characters again is super fun, and what it's doing is really, and I actually do really like the stuff with 11. I think it's harder to judge early on because they've given her this like really dark element of her backstory where she lost her temper, and it's not, and this does not make her a monster. I want to make this clear. I think this was a girl who was given this unstoppable power. If you want to compare it to weapons, right? I don't think this is necessarily a terrible comparison. Her power that they gave her, that they bred into her, or whatever they did to her when her mother was pregnant, and this unbelievable power, which is we've seen her move vehicles, rip monsters in half. Like, it is a killing power. It's not it's not the phrase that my brain is going towards is weapon of mass destruction. It's not that. It's more akin to like just a gun, I suppose. But I think the idea that this was a child who was given a deadly weapon and something bad happened because of it, because she's too young to operate that deadly weapon, and she's too young to understand the weight of what she did. And that's why now she's getting older, and maybe whether or not she always remembered it or she's just starting to get glimpses and remember it now, this idea that maybe she's a monster, and her losing her temper with the bully is exactly something she shouldn't do, because she is kind of she doesn't have superpowers right now, but in the same way that Jonathan and Martha Kent usually tell young Clark Kent that he can't get angry because, unlike other people, like, he can just snap someone in two like it's nothing. Like, if he doesn't watch how he's feeling, if he doesn't watch his strength, he will hurt someone, and that's something he has to learn because he is different. So I do think it's fascinating to give her this horrible accident from, or in fact, bringing up Superman's son in the comics, Jonathan Kent, not to be confused with his father. Obviously, he was named after his father. He has a dark incident in one of his early stories where he accidentally kills their cat, and and I'm a cat person. It affected me. I was hurt by it, and that's like a really dark moment. And he cries his eyes out, and he sort of learns a really valuable lesson about his powers through that. And the environment they were bringing her, I don't think she is a monster because of this, because this is not on her. It's not on her that she had these powers. It's not on her that she was held in a captive way like this. It's not on her. Like, she was not equipped to deal with those powers. So this is, there is absolutely, this does not nuke her character or make us feel that she shouldn't have redemption, or if she even needs redemption per se, but she needs to feel like she's learned from it and making up for it to herself, because she needs to feel confident in herself. She needs to feel pride in herself. She needs to feel all these things. I think actually that's really fascinating, and the idea that she makes the choice to then train to be better as a potential superhero, powers wise, and that she's stepping into that role because she wants to save everyone, is an interesting way of her trying to make up for this past sin that she feels responsible for. And I do really like Mike's speech, and I hope we get more kind of, to be cheesy about "you're my hero" kind of mantra by the end. I think these characters, I get kind of miserable at times, as much as fun as I'm having, and you need to have the misery a little bit because you need to have them overcome things, you need to have them reconnect, you need to these things need to happen. But like 11, especially in these first couple of episodes, is like really heartbreaking to watch her be bullied and watch her go through this, especially given her past. And not once did I think, let's kill everyone. Oh no, to compare it to another movie, not quite from the 80s, but there's a little bit of a Carrie vibe to that. Like, the idea she might, go nuts and kill everyone. I don't think she will, obviously, but that's kind of the, what it makes me think of pop culture wise, if nothing else. So I am very happy with the first 3 episodes of season 4. And as far as the new characters go, obviously I hate Jonathan's friend, I've made that clear, but I would say that the Eddie is fairly charismatic. I actually kind of liked the scene he had with Chrissy in episode 1. It felt like, he was cracking jokes, he made her feel comfortable, and they kind of realized they both liked each other a bit more than they thought they would. That was kind of nice, on its own, and I think he's got a bit of charisma. He kind of felt like he may be a bit of a bully at first when they were in the cafeteria and he was like making our main characters look for someone, but otherwise, he actually is quite likable. Some of the others do feel like they're there to be fodder. Like I said, Nancy's like co-worker, for lack of a better term. He very. I'm not surprised he didn't last long. And some of the jocks, like friends in the team, like I'm not surprised that one of them's next, and it wouldn't surprise me if most of them end up dead. And they're serving their purpose fine enough. I'm not really supposed to like them per se. I'm supposed to be rooting for Lucas to like stop caring what they think and like go back with his like friends. Not that not that they're innocent completely, because they didn't sort of support him in his basketball like endeavors. He says he kind of asked them to like, this means something to me. Can you please ask them to move the thing? And they do try to ask them to move it, but Eddie's not having it. But there is kind of a thing. It's kind of sad when Lucas turns around and no one's there to watch him. I was thinking, where's his parents in this? His parents feel like a nice, happy, proper, couple and a happy family home. I was surprised that his parents and Erica weren't. Well, I know where Erica was. Erica was in the D&D game, but I said that we're D&D, not D&D, D&D. But hey, whatever. So yeah. I'm sure there's other things that I've not spoken about. I do love the villain and the monster, the monster of the season, and how different it feels from prior seasons. So the plan right now is just to come back when I'm done with episode 7, however quick that may be. I watched episodes 1 to 3. I had a couple of breaks. I had breaks between the episodes a little bit, but I basically watched them back to back. I watched them all in one night. So I'm not sure how long it'll be till I've done the other 4, but it probably won't be long. I do have to stop at some point and review the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode because of the patrons. God damn it. But that may wait until I'm done with all 7 episodes. I'm not gonna lie. Like I kind of don't give a shit about that show. So I will see you soon for my thoughts on the second half of season 4 volume 1. That is a really convoluted way of saying that. But I will see you guys soon for that. Hopefully my ramblings and thoughts and feelings about the season so far have been entertaining. And if you have stopped after episode 3, if you see this goes up to episode 3 to sort of get some thoughts on it before you continue, that's cool. As far as predicting things goes, I mean, I'm not really feeling the need to. I just kind of trust the show to do whatever. I expect people to sort of come together again. But other than that, like, I'm just kind of excited. I guess the question is, are they going to have the balls to kill off one of the characters, one of the main characters, and will it, will the other group in California ever kind of like go to Hawkins or reconnect with them? I wonder if there's some shenanigans where if they go into the Upside Down there somehow, that they end up like they can travel to Hawkins much easier in the Upside. I don't know, and then they pop out. And I don't know. I'm spitballing. I don't have any concrete ideas there, but I'm into it. I'm into what's going on so far. I guess the only, if I was going to try and give another critique, I would maybe say that we don't need as much of the journey to Alaska, perhaps. Because the way it always did a twofer where it would show you Joyce on the plane with bombing, as much as I like, those characters, I don't know if I needed to see it every time before we saw part of Hopper's plan. So if you wanted to trim down episode 3 by a few minutes, I would say you could maybe have cut out a little bit of that. But I mean, I'm looking for. I'm trying to be as critical as I possibly can, because I'm happy the show's back. I love a lot of what it's doing. I want to try and be critical where I think I can be, but by and large, I actually really like a lot of what it's doing. I love that it's a little bit darker. I love that we're getting slasher movie, Freddy Krueger style kind of things, and it does feel like it's building up. I think when I saw the trailer, I thought, well, there's a haunted house, and clearly the house that this thing is in the Upside Down is where they're going to ultimately go at some point to try and stop them or stop him. But I'll be curious to learn more about this. The Vecna. Like, is it a person who went to the Upside Down and has been killing people from there? Is it something native to the Upside Down? Because I still kind of get the vibe that it's like, because it's so humanoid that either it's based on someone from the real world, or I do wonder if someone somewhere went to the Upside Down. Of course, as far as we know, 11 is the one who opened the door, and there was never a connection before then. I mean, certainly the Upside Down existed, but it had never been opened before. And which is interesting in and of itself, because if this monster did exist in 1959 and it was killing this guy's family, it would certainly suggest that there is another connection. The way he's doing it is different and separate to opening a gate, and therefore it's interesting that this thing could already sort of influence our world before the rip happened in 1983. So I'm curious to learn more about that as we go throughout the season. So excited for the next chunk of episodes. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. This has been about an hour, which is not bad, I suppose, for 3 episodes. Hopefully you've had fun with my rambling. Maybe I was a little insightful, or maybe you're just happy to hear what I think of various things. By all means, because obviously this is 3 episodes, anything you want to talk about from the 3 episodes that I have brought up or haven't brought up, feel free to put down below. Oh, one other minor thing, and maybe they were just breaking the rules here in universe, and maybe it was just a little bit different in the 80s in 1986. But I did think it. I'm pretty sure that because she's a minor, the police can't necessarily just interview a child on their own without a guardian present of some kind. That was a sort of, it felt like a minor little like logic hole there. I won't quite call it a plot hole, I'll call it a logic hole, because I'm pretty sure, like, obviously I know there's stories of that happening when it's not supposed to happen. And maybe that's what's happening here, is that these policemen are just being dicks and not following the rules. That's entirely possible, but it did occur to me when the scene was happening and they were interrogating her without anyone present. But yeah, so good stuff. Let me know what you thought of the first 3 episodes, and feel free to talk about the first 3 episodes in the comments, ask questions, whatever. But thank you very much. And not just for my sake either, like just for other people who come here to just get thoughts on the first 3. Keep spoilers for the rest of it away. The video for the second chunk of episodes will be up in a couple of days, if that, maybe, if I'm feeling really adventurous. But yeah, but thank you very much for joining me. Of course, you can support everything we do over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support us over there for as little as $1 per month to get some bonuses. You can hit the thanks button on the video now if you want to do it that way. Of course, you can like, comment, subscribe. All those things do help spread the numbers and drive the YouTube algorithm and all that bullshit. But thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully you're also enjoying this season of Stranger Things. I will see you soon. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?